She stole her sister Shaz's boyfriend's at and lied for 6 months, thinking she'd get away with it. But Caroline's victory lap ends tonight. As soon as she locks eyes with a terrifying CEO standing next to the sister she betrayed, her champagne glass starts trembling. She's about to lose everything, and the real revenge hasn't even started yet. Listen up, because tonight we are jumping right into a story about a girl who basically ghosted the afterlife and came back for pure revenge. Just 3 weeks ago, Arya Vale was literally the punchline of this high society joke. Her absolute trash boyfriend, Marcus, did not just dump her. He publicly shattered her by choosing her own sister, Caroline, right at a family dinner. Classic villain move, right? They all thought she would just cry in a corner and fade out. But look at her now. She just crashed the Whitmore Gala on the arm of Luca Darrow, a guy whose name alone makes billionaires sweat bullets. We are about to watch a broken girl become completely untouchable. Stick with me, because sometimes the deepest wounds teach us how to forge the absolute strongest armor. The chandelier hanging over this ballroom is absurdly huge, weighing like 4 tons, and costing way more money than most of us will ever see. Arya knows this because she used to be just a shadow here. Back then, she was the ultimate doormat, forcing fake smiles through dead conversations about summer homes, while Marcus literally ditched her to network. That sad, eager-to-please version of her is totally gone now. Tonight, the light bouncing off the crystal hits completely differently. It is freezing cold and razor-sharp, glittering off the champagne glasses, and the incredibly fake masks these rich snobs wear. Honestly, it is a pretty lonely wake-up call when you finally realize that the brightest rooms often hide the absolute darkest and emptiest hearts. She stood completely frozen at the top of the stairs, barely resting her hand on Luca. She absolutely refused to cling to him like some desperate fangirl. She just owned the silence, posing like she bought the entire building. Luca mumbled, without even looking at her, his voice this deep rumble that just commanded the room. "You are doing fine," he told her. Arya swallowed hard, whispering back that she had not even done anything yet. "Exactly," he replied. "That is the whole point." Below them was this massive ocean of expensive tuxedos, a room basically choking on its own cash. Somewhere in that trap, Marcus was staring hard. She felt it like ice on her neck. Her backstabbing sister Caroline was there too. Sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who draw it first. Arya felt her jaw clench so hard her teeth actually ached. "Easy," Luca warned her with his soft edge. He still refused to look her way, his dark eyes just scanning the crowd like a total boss picking his next target. "If you tense up, they will smell the fear," he told her. "I am not tense," she totally lied. "You are vibrating," he fired back. She let out a long, shaky breath and forced her shoulders to relax. He was spot on, and she kind of hated him for seeing right through her tough girl act. They walked down the stairs in perfect sync, and heads literally snapped toward them. "You and I know exactly the kind of dude Luca is. Huge, sharp jaw eyes like a midnight ocean. Being near someone that powerful is risky, but sometimes you need a major fire to burn away the rot of your past." Tonight, for his own mysterious reasons, he actually chose to walk into this mess with her. The second their shoes hit the floor, a waiter basically spawned out of nowhere. Luca smoothly grabbed 2 expensive glasses, handing one to Arya. "You do not even have to drink it," he muttered. "Just hold it to keep your shaky hands busy." "I know how champagne works," she snapped back. "Do you?" he asked, a tiny smirk on his face. Then his voice dropped super low. 11 o'clock. Marcus just spotted you." Arya felt her heart slam against her ribs. "What does he look like?" she panicked. "Like someone just told him his entire life is over," Luca replied smoothly. "Honestly. Life really has a funny way of bringing our worst regrets right to our front door when we least expect it." Marcus was totally frozen by the fancy bar. His drink was just hovering in the air, his face pale white and twisting into this hilarious mask of pure panic. It was honestly such a beautiful train wreck to watch. Arya purposely turned away before he could even catch his breath, acting like he was just a piece of lint on the wall. "How do you feel?" Luca asked, his deep voice cutting through the party music. "Like my stomach is doing backflips," she admitted. "That is completely normal," he told her. "You are basically setting fire to 3 years of history in under 2 hours right now. I would think you were crazy if you were not terrified." They pushed deeper into the shiny trap, past all those fake people. Realizing who your true friends are is often a very quiet, super painful wake-up call. This one lady dripping in green silk did a massive double take, leaning in to trash talk with her husband. This older couple gave Luca a stiff nod, awkwardly pretending they were not judging Arya. These were the exact people who watched Marcus cheat, knew all about Caroline and kept their mouths shut. Smile, Luca commanded. I am smiling. She fired back. No, you are literally just showing your teeth, he pointed out. We have all been there, right? Wearing a fake expression so tight it hurts. Arya finally relaxed her jaw, giving them a slow, evil smirk instead of looking desperate. So much better, Luca whispered. Let us make them totally sweat. He walked her right into the center. True confidence is walking into the lion's den and acting like you own the zoo. Marcus used to hype these people up as the absolute kings of the city, the literal gatekeepers of success. Luca, this guy, Robert said, sticking his hand out. I totally did not expect to see you here. Luca shook it once, super cold and ridiculously fast. I do not do charity gigs, I made an exception. Robert immediately zeroed in on Arya, hunting for weakness. This is Arya Vale, Luca dropped. He did not say she was his date or some random +1. He just stated her name like an absolute boss. When Robert took her hand, you could see his brain completely rebooting. Some gossipy woman leaned in all fake Arya Vale. Why does that sound familiar? Let me tell you. True grace is keeping your cool when the fake people start circling like vultures. Mostly does editorial work. Luca lied with this incredibly smooth swagger. You have probably seen her name in Vogue. It was such a perfect, totally bulletproof lie. Arya was just a freelancer. But that gossipy lady suddenly nodded, like she knew it all along. Oh yes, obviously, I thought so. People honestly only respect the value you aggressively claim for yourself. The conversation just kept rolling. All this boring talk about corporate takeovers and giant boats. Arya stood there looking like an absolute queen, gripping her glass. She totally nailed the part, laughing softly, nodding, but never speaking. Total silence is honestly terrifying to people who love hearing their own voices. 10 minutes later, Luca pulled her away. You killed it, he muttered. I literally did not say a word, Arya whispered back. Exactly, Luca replied, looking super smug. You let their own empty heads fill in the blanks. That is the ultimate power move. Arya took a slow sip of her drink. It tasted rich but felt hollow. I seriously do not get how you tolerate this scene, she admitted. Practice, he said dryly. But she was not letting him off the hook. That is a total cop-out answer. Luca faced her directly. No pity in his eyes, just this cold, brutal honesty. Want the real truth? He asked. I stopped caring the minute I realized they are all just terrified of being nobodies. Once you spot their weakness, it is all just a joke. Listen, when you rip away the designer clothes, human insecurity looks exactly the same on every single person. Arya slowly turned around, and boom, there he was. Marcus, he was just a few feet away, nervously stuffing his hands into his expensive pockets, failing completely to look cool. Up close, the guy looked incredibly washed up compared to the dude who broke her heart. Heavy bags under his eyes practically screamed, guilty conscience. Or maybe he always looked this tragic, and she had just been blinded by love. Marcus, she said, her voice freezing cold like she was talking to a telemarketer. He swallowed super hard, said eyeing Luca before getting desperate. Can we talk? We are talking, she shot back. I mean alone, he begged. Luca did not even flinch. He just stood there like a terrifying bodyguard. Forgiveness is cool and all, but setting a massive boundary is how you actually survive. He clenched his jaw, stressing out. Arya, please, he whined. No, that one simple word hung in the air. Totally brutal and completely final. Marcus looked shocked, blinking like his brain broke. I just wanted to explain. He started. I said no, she repeated. Right then, you could literally see his massive ego shatter into dust. He looked so offended, like he really thought she would just fold and give him the easy closure his toxic guilt needed. But you and I know the real deal here. We never owe our peace of mind to the exact same people who wrecked it. Enjoy your party, Arya whispered, turning her back on him for good. Luca walked right beside her onto the outside patio, out in the freezing air. Arya closed her eyes and finally felt like she could actually breathe again. This scene, guys. The massive city skyline is spread out below them, glowing like dropped diamonds in the dark. Arya leans into the freezing wind, muttering that her ex looks totally pathetic down there. Luca, our mysterious enforcer, just smiles this cold smile. He tells her it is good. Let that loser choke on the void in his chest. Inside it is all fake laughs and clinking silver, but out here it is just raw truth. Arya looks at him and asks why he is really helping her destroy these people. Luca leans on the stone, his voice heavy with some serious old trauma. He says he knows exactly what it is like to be treated like absolute garbage by the exact people you trusted most. The lesson here is simple, folks. Never let anyone make you feel tiny just because they are too weak to handle your actual power. Welcome back, Night Owls. Let us sink into this insane ballroom tension together. Arya stares at Luca, looking way past that expensive tailored suit. Beneath that smooth exterior, she knows the guy is a walking time bomb. She whispers a heavy thank you into the cold night. Luca barely blinks. He warns her not to celebrate yet, because this nightmare is far from over. He pushes off the rail, fixing his cuffs like a boss, and drops the bomb. Her backstabbing sister just walked in. Arya forgets how to breathe. Luca scans the room like a predator, noting the sister is totally blind to them. Arya panics, whispering that she cannot face her. Luca locks his dark eyes on her with absolute certainty. You can, he says. Real talk, guys. When fear freezes your blood, sometimes you just need one person to bet their life on your hidden strength. Luca is not letting her back down. His voice drops, completely anchoring her panic. He reminds her she has faced down absolute wolves who would shred her if she showed weakness. She dumped the guy who broke her. She can totally pull this off. Arya asks what happens if she completely breaks down. Luca is ruthless but correct. He says she can fall apart later, but never in front of the enemy. She nods, forcing her confidence back together. They step straight into the lion den. Caroline is acting like fake royalty by the champagne tower, stealing the spotlight like she owns the place. Arya feels her chest violently squeeze shut with panic. Luca just softly orders her to breathe. The lesson here is brutal but true, guys. Save your tears for the safety of your empty bedroom, and never give your rivals the satisfaction of watching you shatter. They strut across the ballroom like absolute bosses, making sure Caroline is forced to notice. Caroline scans the crowd, spots her sister, and completely blue screens. The entire room stops breathing. That fake smile completely drops. Arya catches every bit of her enemy's panic. Luca does not blink, keeping a terrifyingly calm stride, and Arya perfectly matches his energy. They walk right past the traitor. Close enough for Caroline to realize Arya is rolling with the most dangerous enforcer in the city. Caroline's jaw literally drops. Arya just flashes an ice-cold smile and keeps walking. Caroline is left entirely paralyzed, her glass violently shaking. Luca quietly asks how she feels. She admits she is trembling. He replies she does not look it at all. Life tip: guy's confidence is just a heavy armor you fake until it becomes completely real. The orchestra fires up a slow waltz. Luca holds out his hand, telling her to dance. Arya hesitates, admitting she has 2 left feet. Luca brushes it off, saying he is awful too. But perfection is not the goal tonight. She takes his hand, and this terrifying enforcer pulls her to the center, holding her with insane, unexpected gentleness. They start swaying, totally ignoring the music. Arya whispers that every single eye is burning into them. Let them stare, he replies calmly. Over his shoulder, Arya spots Marcus, violently clenching his jaw at the bar, fuming. Caroline is still frozen like a ghost. For the first time in weeks, Arya is no longer the pathetic punchline of their toxic drama, spinning under those chandeliers. She finally feels like the absolute winner. Lesson time: the absolute greatest revenge is letting your enemies see you completely unbothered. Points out she is actually smiling, his deep voice cutting right through the music. She asks if she is, and he confirms it is a completely genuine smile. Arya looks into his dark, dangerous eyes, past the whole mob enforcer vibe. There is a crazy protective warmth burning inside him. She hits him with another heavy thank you. He notes she keeps saying that, but she truly means it. The music stops and he lets her go incredibly slowly instantly. The space between them feels freezing cold. He sneaks them out to a dark balcony, turning the loud party into mere background noise. Arya leans on the iron rail, staring at the glowing city sky. She whispers that she keeps waiting for the massive emotional crash to destroy her. You and I both know that feeling, right? The absolute hardest part of surviving a toxic disaster is waiting for the delayed shock to finally hit. Luca asks what she is waiting for. She says she is waiting for the pure rage, the absolute betrayal, she thought. Seeing her toxic ex and sister would completely shatter her, but she feels dead inside. She asks if feeling numb is bad. You and I have probably both felt that terrifying numbness, guys. It happens when a heart refuses to take any more damage. Luca stands there, a dark shadow against the neon skyline. He suggests she already processed the garbage they put her through. She snaps back that maybe she is just empty. Luca is not having it. He tells her she is way stronger than she realizes. She claims he does not know her. He locks eyes and says she could have hidden at home and let those snakes win. But she showed up instead. That is not numbness. That is a choice. Lesson learned: real strength is choosing to step up and fight back, even when your emotional tank is completely empty. She bites back her argument because maybe this enforcer is entirely right. She chose to walk straight into the fire, Suddenly, the door flies open. A laughing couple stumbles out, takes one look at Luca's terrifying, ice-cold aura, and instantly retreats into the party. Luca casually checks his watch. He announces about 2 hours, and that is enough. She is surprised it went fast. He drops another truth bomb. She made her statement, and hanging around too long totally waters down the impact of the victory. Arya feels that wisdom settle deep. They stroll through the ballroom for one final victory lap. Marcus is seething as they leave. Caroline is staring in absolute defeat. Arya does not give her toxic past a single glance back. A black sedan is waiting outside. She slides into the leather seats, Luca following like a ghost. Pro tip: folks always leave the battlefield while you are still the undisputed winner. Second that car door shuts, the world goes completely silent. Arya lets out a massive breath she has been holding for 3 miserable weeks. Luca's voice softens, telling her she actually pulled it off. She whispers it back, shocked she survived. He asks how she feels. She admits she is totally exhausted, wired on adrenaline, but mostly hollow. He gently replies that is entirely normal. The sedan glides like a ghost through the dark streets, leaving the toxic gala drama far behind in the rear view. She watches the skyscrapers blur past and asks what happens next. Luca keeps it ridiculously simple. Go home, sleep, wake up, and keep breathing. She stares at his hardened face and demands the real truth. Why did he actually help her? He leans into the dark shadows and repeats his line. He knows exactly what it feels like to be completely underestimated. The lesson sometimes, just taking another breath is your greatest victory. Arya pushes back, saying there is no way that is the full story. He finally cracks. Admitting it is not, she asks if he will ever spill the truth. For the first time all night, this terrifying enforcer completely drops his mask. That cold armor cracks, revealing a soul-crushing grief hiding right under the surface. He whispers that maybe he will tell her, but not tonight. The car rolls to a stop outside her apartment. She steps onto the concrete and turns back, dropping one final thank you. He gives a solid nod and tells her to rest. The heavy door slams, and the vehicle vanishes into the thick fog. Standing alone on that empty sidewalk, she realizes the shattered glass inside her chest has forged into pure steel. She literally survived her own funeral. She walks into her dark place, standing tall as a true survivor. Life lesson: the fires meant to destroy you will only forge your heart into unbreakable steel. We all know this exact feeling, right? It is that dead hour where the massive adrenaline spike finally drains from your blood. Arya tosses her cloak on the counter and kicks off her heels. She stands in the dark apartment, listening to the fridge buzz. Suddenly, her phone lights up. A text from an unknown number says she was magnificent tonight, signed with a single L. She stares at it before flipping the phone face down. Her hands are violently shaking. It is not fear. It is the crazy rush of actually surviving the fire. She walked into the lion den, stared down the architects of her misery, and walked out totally unbroken. So why does her throat burn with unshed tears? She flicks the lights on, fills a glass with cold water, and slams it down on the counter. The loud crack echoes. Lesson here: surviving a brutal war does not mean you get to skip the terrifying emotional crash. She presses her hands against the freezing granite, squeezing her eyes shut. That she tries the breathing trick Lou taught her. In for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. But counting is completely useless when the massive emotional dam inside your chest suddenly snaps. The tears just explode. Hot, violent, and totally impossible to stop. But she is not crying over sadness or betrayal. These are the tears that rip out of you when you have worn heavy armor for far too long, and your exhausted soul finally decides it is safe to collapse. She slides down the cabinets, hits the floor, and surrenders to the absolute breakdown. 10 minutes vanish in the dark, maybe 15. Time stops existing as the crushing weight of the last 3 weeks finally pours out of her. The important lesson: you absolutely must let the breakdown happen before the real healing can finally begin. Crying stops. Arya feels hollowed out, like all the toxic poison has been scraped from her veins. She drops into an exhausted sleep, but morning hits way too early. Sunlight slices through her blinds as her phone starts violently vibrating. She squints at the screen and her stomach drops. 12 missed calls, 23 crazy texts. The high society vultures are circling the drama, begging to know the identity of the terrifying enforcer from the gala. But one notification instantly freezes her blood, a cold message from her mother, demanding they talk immediately. Arya drops the phone on her chest and stares blankly at the ceiling. Her mother is back, and this means absolute war. The final lesson today: guys, the second you think you have totally escaped your dark past, it will always find a new way to drag you right back into the blazing fire. I both know exactly how these toxic family phone calls go down, right? The second our girl, Arya, dips from the Whitmore Gala, Caroline is already spinning this totally twisted web, playing the ultimate crying victim. Arya is so done with that radioactive swamp of drama, but boom, her phone aggressively buzzes again. It is her mom calling with that suffocating, quiet disappointment vibe that just absolutely wrecks your soul. Arya answers, totally exhausted, reminding her it is literally 11 in the morning after a crazy night. Then the heavy pause drops. Mom says Caroline snitched about Arya, being with the ruthless Luca Darrow. Arya just owns it. Yes, I was. Here is the thing. Folks, sometimes the only way to beat a toxic game is to stop hiding and just own your controversial moves. Back to the absolute madness, everyone. Let us jump right back into the dark with Arya. Her mom had just dropped a massive warning, asking if Arya even comprehended how insanely dangerous this Luca guy really is. We are talking about a ruthless boss where people who cross him literally vanish into thin air. Arya almost laughs out loud at the wild hypocrisy, thinking about her ex Marcus and his own brand of total destruction. She tries to shut it down. But her mom hangs up first, tossing her phone away. Arya is not even sad anymore. She is just feeling this razor-sharp betrayal cutting deep into her chest. The hardest life lesson to swallow is that the people supposed to be your safe space are often the ones setting the house on fire. Look, maybe it is pure, unadulterated rage, or maybe it is that crushing exhaustion from always being the one bleeding out in the corner, just to keep everybody else happy. Our girl drags herself to the shower to scrub off the gala drama, then brews coffee so incredibly dark it could wake the dead. Sitting at her desk, all that hot anger turns into pure, freezing focus. She has all these finished portraits open on her laptop, but she just closes them all. The past is dead to her right now. She clicks open her email, scrolling past the usual junk, and boom, a single word jumps out at her. Opportunity. This is exactly how the universe operates. The best opportunities only show up at your door the exact second you finally decide to stop letting the ghosts of your past dictate your future. She almost deletes the email instantly, but some gut instinct screams at her to click it. Guys, the message is from a powerhouse senior editor at Prestige magazine. This is the absolute big leagues. The email is straight up hyping Arya's work and asking for a pitch meeting. Arya reads it once, twice, and then a third time, completely mind-blown. It makes zero sense because just 12 months ago, these exact same people handed her a totally brutal rejection. She knows her art is solid, but she did not think she was hitting that elite tier just yet. It is crazy how fast things flip in this world. But here is the real takeaway. We always start doubting our own worth when a massive win falls into our lap, completely forgetting that timing and placement are just as vital as your actual talent. I know there is always a catch, right? That isn't the Massimo plot twist hits. She searches Luca's name online, and boom, there it is. The absolute madman bought a controlling stake in the magazine's parent company 6 months ago. He literally owns the place. He pulled some heavy strings to kick those wide open for her. Arya is torn between feeling super proud and just being exhausted. Then her phone buzzes, a text from him demanding lunch, saying he is sending a car. Her first instinct is to snap back and say she does not need a hero. But let us be real for a second. She let this terrifying boss guide her through the gala. Sometimes pride is just way too heavy of a burden. And the absolute smartest thing you can do is let a powerful ally help you carry the weight. She hits reply with just one single word. Okay, fast forward to 1:45, and this ridiculously sleek black car is just chilling at her curb. The driver is totally silent, zero small talk, giving a quick nod as she hops into the premium leather seat. They ghost through the city like they are invisible, rolling into a forgotten brick neighborhood. The ride stops at a secret, nameless spot, with just a faded number on the door. She steps out, and the car literally vanishes like a phantom. Inside, the vibe is super dim and intense. Luca is posted up in the back corner like a true mob boss. Watching the door, he stands up and just whispers that she actually came. Listen. Sometimes stepping straight into the terrifying unknown is the absolute bravest thing a broken person can do. You knew I would show up. She fires back, but he just quietly says he was hoping she would. They slide into this super plush velvet booth, right, as a ninja waiter drops the menus and dips out. Arya folds her shaking hands, locking eyes with this absolute boss. She straight up accuses him of buying her the job. Luca does not even blink. He smoothly claims he just made an introduction, but she is not buying it, reminding him that owning the company literally changes the entire game. He leans back into the shadows, asking if she is mad. He insists he only forced them to look at her art because it is actually top tier. It sounds cool, but it's true. Sometimes you absolutely need a total stranger to recognize your ultimate potential before you can ever actually see it yourself. She shakes her head, claiming he has not even seen her real portfolio. But boom, massive plot twist. He casually mentions he stalked her old website that very morning. He drops his voice super low and hits her with the facts. Her work is absolute fire. She has just been standing in all the wrong rooms. Arya is totally paralyzed, completely exposed. The waiter pops back up, and Luca orders for both of them in this smooth Italian. She does not even try to fight it, once the silence drops again. He looks right at her, knowing she is wondering why he is pulling these strings. She whispers back that she asked earlier, and he dodged it. Real talk, guys. True connection only kicks off the exact second you finally stop playing games and demand the absolute truth. Just tracing his glass like a boss, reflecting on his tragic backstory. 5 years ago, he whispers, he was engaged to this girl Isabel. Total power couple vibes on the outside. Arya is barely breathing as he drops the absolute hammer. Isabel ditched him 2 weeks before the wedding to run off with his right-hand business partner of 10 years. Can you imagine the disrespect? Arya apologizes, but he just brushes it off. He says it was the ultimate wake-up call. It proved that loyalty is a complete joke until the heat is on. Most people just fold. But the ones who actually ride for you? Priceless. Here is the golden rule. Trust is just like a mirror, and once it gets smashed, you only ever show your reflection to the people who will not bleed while holding it. They drop this incredibly fancy pasta on the table, but Arya has zero appetite now. She picks up her fork and just drops it. She looks right at him and admits she cannot figure him out at all, sounding super vulnerable. Luca smirks and says that is exactly how he likes it. The whole table goes dead silent. The food is top tier, but to Arya, it feels like eating cardboard. Her brain is working overtime, trying to picture this absolute tank of a man getting destroyed by someone he actually loved. She asks the million-dollar question, does he regret ever letting her in? Luca locks eyes with her and says he only regrets picking the wrong player, not the actual game. Remember this, a heart that completely refuses to risk. Taking another shot is a heart that is already completely dead inside. With me here, guys, because this is where the boss origin story actually drops. Luca admits that if he had not been totally backstabbed, he would still be a guy he absolutely hated. He stopped begging for a seat and just started kicking doors down. He actively chose to be feared instead of being a victim. Arya asks if being a terrifying boss is really the goal. He immediately corrects her, saying he just wants total respect, and fear is simply the fastest cheat code. When Arya really looks at him, she sees the massive damage hiding under that expensive suit. Matching her own trauma, she whispers that she refuses to end up like that. Pain is wild, guys. It can either be a dark prison or a fiery forge. But we always get to pick what kind of armor we walk away wearing. But Luca fires back, hard cold, totally untouchable. When she nods, Luca shuts that down instantly. He tells her she is way too terrified of turning cold to ever actually freeze over. The fake ones never stop to ask if they are losing their souls. They just turn into complete monsters and make up the excuses later. Once the table is cleared, Arya just stares at nothing. She admits her toxic ex, Marcus, left a voicemail that very morning, and her voice is literally shaking. Luca does not even flinch. He drops a major truth bomb, letting Marcus in her head gives free rent to a guy who is permanently evicted. This is the absolute hardest pill to swallow. Truly walking away means you absolutely refuse to look back. Even when your toxic past starts desperately screaming your name. Deep down, Arya knows this boss is spitting facts, but that toxic curiosity is eating her alive. You and I have totally been there, right? She asks. What if he is actually sorry? She is begging for a reason to relapse. Luca hits her with cold reality. An apology is just empty noise. It does not mean you owe anyone a second chance. She pushes back. What if he wants me back? Luca's jaw completely locks up. Do you even want him back? When she quietly says no. He reminds her that whatever Marcus wants is completely irrelevant now. Arya stares at her chipped nails, totally overwhelmed, admitting she keeps replaying the exact moment she caught him cheating. Listen up closely. The absolute hardest chains to break are the ones we willingly keep wrapping around our own wrists. You guys know that absolutely gut-wrenching feeling, right? Imagine this nightmare scenario. Arya is sitting right there at the family dinner, and her mom makes some innocent joke about grandkids. And what does her trash boyfriend Marcus do? He completely freezes. He does not even look at Arya. Nope, this dude shoots a heavy, secret glance straight across the table, at Caroline. the girl he is secretly hooking up with. When Luca hears this, his eyes go pitch with that mafia boss fury. He asks her what she did, and Arya admits she swallowed the bile and smiled through the dinner like a champ before confronting him. And Marcus just shrugged and said it happened. Absolute garbage behavior. But listen, keeping your dignity is a massive flex. Just never let that quiet strength bury you alive. Arya is literally breaking down in this room, guys. She explains how these clowns acted like their betrayal was a random storm they had zero control over. Her cheating ex swore he never meant to hurt her, and Caroline had the nerve to start crying. She claimed they could not help their feelings, as if that excuses 6 whole months of lies, with Arya totally blind to the knife in her back. She calls herself a complete fool, but Luca leans in with that dark energy. He tells her she is not foolish. She just trusted the worst people. You know, sometimes the heaviest pain we carry comes from giving our absolute best to the ones who deserve it the least. Luca almost grabs her hand right then, but pulls back at the last second. The unspoken tension here is absolutely wild. Luca taps the table, totally commanding her attention. He drops some major truth, saying that what those traitors did says everything about their garbage character, and literally nothing about her. She missed the red flags because her brain is not wired for deception. Seriously, guys, we should never apologize for having a genuinely honest heart. Arya is choking up, whispering that being honest does not feel like a superpower. Luca promises her it will. An hour later, they step into the night. His slick black car is speeding, but he waves his driver off. He just wants to walk with her. They stroll down these quiet streets, her heels clicking on the pavement, after a long, heavy silence. He looks right at her and asks her to tell him something truly real. He wants a deep secret, guys, something she has never told a single soul. Arya admits she is as absolutely terrified of slipping right back into her old habits and getting completely wrecked all over again. Luca stops dead in his tracks, locks eyes with her, and says that is not going to happen. She tries to argue, but he shuts it down. Hall tells her that because she is questioning herself, she is wide awake. People who repeat bad cycles just drift blindly. Arya wants to trust this boss so badly, but hope feels like a massive trap waiting to snap shut on her heart. As the sun sets, casting these cinematic shadows, the real truth hits you. Facing our deepest, darkest hidden is exactly what stops us from repeating our worst history. Never hide from your own shadows. Nowhere, Arya asks him straight up, "What do you even get out of helping me?" Luca lets that question simmer when he speaks. His voice is a deep, intense rumble. He says he gets to watch someone become who they are destined to be, instead of the weak version the world forced on them. He calls that rare and totally worth his time. Let us be real. We all desperately need someone to recognize our true worth when we are blinded by our own pain. They keep walking until the sky goes dark, and Luca calls his ride. He promises to see her soon. When she asks when, he just says, "Whenever you are ready." The car pulls away, and Arya stares in the mirror, watching this mysterious powerhouse fade into the cold street shadows. The suspense and character building in this moment are absolutely top tier. Stick with me, because this is where the drama spikes. Arya is staring at a voicemail from her trash ex, Marcus. "You and I know that toxic urge swearing, we will ignore it, but letting the ghosts drag us back in." She hits play, and Marcus sounds completely destroyed. His usual arrogant confidence is totally gone. He is stammering, calling himself a coward, crying about how much he hurt her. He whispers that he does not expect forgiveness. He just finally realizes the absolute diamond he lost. Such a classic manipulator move. But here is the brutal reality check we all need. A fancy apology is never going to magically fix shattered glass. Regret always bangs on your door the absolute loudest when it is way too late to let them back in. Keep that door bolted shut, guys. Message ends, and what does our girl do? She deletes that garbage and completely blocks his number. Absolute queen behavior. True healing is making the solid choice to slam a heavy door shut. She fires up her laptop and accepts a massive new business deal before fear can ruin it. Instantly her phone buzzes. It is Luca. He just texts, "Proud of you." She asks how he even knew his reply. "Because I know you." She fires back that he does not know her. But he says, "Not yet, but I am getting there so incredibly smooth." Arya stares at her ceiling, wondering if this is actual healing or just a dangerous distraction. Is she evolving or losing herself? Growth is insanely terrifying, guys. But staying permanently broken is a tragic fate we absolutely never have to accept. Take the leap and transform. First time in weeks, that crushing weight on Arya's chest lifts enough for her to take a real breath. That tiny victory is everything. 2 days later, a call from the legendary Elaine Cortez shatters the silence. Arya is sitting there frozen, gripping her pen until her knuckles turn white. Elaine does not waste a single second. She is doing a massive 12-page magazine, spread on powerhouse women. She needs a photographer who shoots raw vulnerability with zero weakness, and says Arya is the perfect fit. Arya literally stops breathing. That sudden wild thrill of finally being recognized for your pure, unfiltered talent. It is almost too much to handle. But it proves that sticking to your true passion actually pays off when you absolutely refuse to quit. And drops the hammer on this deal. Shooties in New York. In 3 weeks, all expenses paid. Arya gets total creative control. And the payout? $15,000, guys. Arya's brain totally flatlines. That kind of cash is life-changing for her. She forces her voice to stay cool and agrees. But the second she hangs up, her hands are violently shaking. This time it is not from dark anxiety. This is pure electric hope. She grabs her phone and texts Luca that she landed the gig. His reply pops up instantly with his usual dark energy. I know. It is a wild experience when those toxic ghosts dragging you down are suddenly replaced by the dizzying thrill of a massive new start. Embrace that terrifying feeling, guys. Because it means you are finally leveling up in life. Here is the crazy plot twist. Luca texts back with this heavy boss energy, saying Elaine called him right after the pitch. Arya is instantly suspicious and demands to know why. Luca casually drops that he told Elaine to call him, just to make sure they were not wasting Arya's time. She is torn between being super grateful and totally annoyed. She texts him to stop managing her life, but Luca hits back with a cold, hard fact. I am just opening the doors. What you do inside them is entirely on you. Boom. She sends a reluctant thank you, and before she can blink, he demands they get dinner tonight. She hesitates, because every time she gets close to him, the lines get dangerously blurry. The most terrifying doors we ever walk through are the ones leading straight into a fiercely guarded heart. Luca declares he is picking her up at 7 sharp. No argument allowed. Arya spends 4 hours in a total panic, absolutely trashing her closet. Every dress feels way too desperate or way too loud. Finally, she throws on some sharp black tailored pants and a dark silk blouse. It is basically her quiet armor. At exactly 7, his massive black car is idling at the curb. Luca is waiting in the back, blending into the shadows as she slides in. He murmurs that she looks nice. She tries to deflect, saying he always says that, but he smoothly replies that it is true every single time. As they cruise through the traffic, the streetlights flash across the tinted glass. It really shows you how finding the exact right company can make a massive, chaotic city feel totally isolated. When she asks where they are heading, Luca just says, somewhere quieter. They drive out of the frantic city, landing in a quiet suburb that feels a million miles away from their crazy reality. They pull up to a tiny hidden bistro right next to an old bookstore. Inside, the vibe is warm and dimly lit. Full of mismatched vintage chairs, the owner greets this terrifying boss by his first name and takes them to a secluded booth. Arya asks if he comes here a lot. Luca stares down at the table and admits he used to come here to think, but now, he only brings the rare people he absolutely refuses to perform for. Guys, he is literally handing her the keys to his hidden sanctuary. Finding someone you never have to wear a fake mask around is the ultimate level of absolute trust and loyalty. Always hold on to those rare people in your life. Up, guys, because this is where the plot thickens. Arya is sitting across from the literal dawn of the city, completely disarmed by his soft side. She is hiding behind the menu, while they get their drinks, wine for her, straight whiskey for him. The food comes out in tiny, expensive portions, setting the stage for heavy truths. Luca swirls his drink like a true boss and asks about New York. Arya straight up admits she is terrified. She thinks if she fumbles the bag now, everyone will say she only got the spot because of his mob influence. Luca is a savage. He stares her down and says to let the haters talk, because her success will shut them up. The real lesson here? The absolute heaviest chains we carry in this life are always the ones we quietly forge in our own doubting minds. Stop holding yourself back. He leans back in the dim light, studying her with dark eyes that have seen way too much street action. He tells her she is stressing over the wrong things entirely. Focus on the grind, he says, and block out the noise. Arya is practically dead on her feet, the exhaustion real and heavy. She asks if he thinks any of this is easy for her, but bro hits her with a massive truth bomb. For 10 years, he built his whole empire on pure fear just to survive. He fumbled bags, lost loyal people, and wasted years trying to fit into rooms of old money that hated him. And the crazy irony, even as the top boss, he still feels like an outcast. It just proves that the hardest cages to break out of are the ones we build ourselves just to feel safe in a chaotic world. Welcome back to the Midnight Hour. You and I have been watching Arya carry the heavy weight of the world, haven't we? She just sits there, taking in his words, while Luca stares into his whiskey, like it holds all the answers to the universe. He reveals he simply stopped waiting for permission from anyone. No more bowing to investors or snobby elites who thought they were better than him. He trusted his own gut, even when the odds were trash. Sometimes you just have to take the leap, because playing it safe is the fastest way to lose yourself completely. When he took a loss, he just learned faster than the cowards around him. The tension finally drops, and Arya feels a rare moment of peace. Eventually, she gets brave enough to pry into his dark past. The second she brings up Isabel, Luca's whole vibe shifts. He does not put up a full wall, but you can see the shadows in his eyes get way darker. He drops a huge plot twist. She actually reached out a year later begging for forgiveness. He let her talk, and then he literally just hung up the phone on her. Absolute menace behavior. But honestly, sometimes people do not apologize to heal your wounds. They do it just to erase their own guilt. Arya feels a cold ache thinking about Marcus and his pathetic voicemails. She asks if Luca regrets shutting Isabel out like that. He gives a blunt no. He knew she only wanted him to clear her conscience, so she could sleep at night. He refused to be the cure for her betrayal. Arya wisps that it sounds incredibly harsh. Luca straight up admits it was harsh, but the absolute truth usually is exactly that. The dinner plates vanish into the shadows, swapped out for some strong, dark coffee. Arya grips her warm mug like her life depends on it, trying to stay grounded. She confesses she is super jealous of how he commanded the room at the gala, wishing she had just a fraction of that boss armor. Luca tells her she already has it, but she claims it is all fake. The reality is confidence is often just a masterclass in survival. Luca leans in and drops another gem. He says literally everyone in that high society room was faking it. Power is merely convincing the world you hold it, and then convincing yourself. Seeing him under those dim lights, the untouchable Dawn suddenly looks totally human. For the very first time, she notices the faint exhaustion lines around his dark eyes. It is that deep, soul-crushing fatigue you only spot if you actually care about someone. She asks if constantly playing this ruthless mob boss role ever drains his spirit. The silence that drops is heavy, packed with unspoken regrets. Finally, he admits he feels the burnout every single day. The hardest lesson in life is realizing you spent years building a version of yourself that you do not even respect anymore. To quit the game means facing that bitter reality, and he is just not ready to throw in the towel yet. His raw honesty leaves Arya completely stunned. He downs the rest of his drink, the ice clinking loud, and leads her out into the cold night air for a walk. I know, walking through the city at midnight hits different. They drift through the empty streets, the yellow street lamps lighting up their path while her heels click against the pavement. Out of nowhere, Luca cuts straight to the core of her trauma. Bringing up her mother and sister, you really cannot outrun your own blood forever, no matter how fast you sprint. Arya admits her heart is completely shattered. Half of her wants to scream about the betrayal, and the other half just wants to disappear off the map. She knows her mother will always pick Caroline over her. It is a terrible thing to realize. You were never the favorite child. Caroline is totally going to play the victim. Luca looks at her and asks the big question, will Arya actually let her get away with it? Arya feels completely cornered, asking what other move she even has left in this messed up nightmare. Luca stops dead in his tracks. He tells her she has every choice in the world right now. We all write our own stories. And giving someone else the pen is a fatal mistake you absolutely cannot afford to make. She can fight back, walk away, or forgive, but she cannot just hide while they control the narrative. Arya admits she does not even know how to fight them. He reminds her of the gala, how she dominated the room just by standing her ground. She whispers she only survived because he was there as her shield. The fear of abandonment is a heavy chain. She admits she is terrified. He will walk away and leave her broken. He promises he will stay, but she still doubts him. Luca locks eyes with her, projecting this fierce, unshakable confidence that completely commands the street. He tells her straight up that he never does anything halfway, and he definitely does not waste time on people he does not believe in. When Arya finally looks back at him, the raw honesty in his gaze actually scares her. True connection is often scarier than isolation, because it demands you to be entirely seen without your fake armor. She asks what he actually expects from her. His voice drops into that low boss tone. He wants her to stop apologizing for existing, to stop second-guessing every move, and to trust her own instincts. It is a monumental task to unlearn a lifetime of shrinking yourself. He smiles, telling her she is already leveling up. Let us pause and really feel this moment. Together, you and I, the tension between them has peaked heavy with an unspoken vibe neither is ready to admit. But then cold reality ruins it. Her phone starts buzzing like crazy in her pocket. She tries to ignore it, but it just keeps going off like an alarm. Luca tells her to check it, and it is a barrage of texts from Caroline. Her sister is begging to talk, using their family tie like a toxic weapon. Arya instantly feels that suffocating panic rushing back. Luca sees the pure fear on her face, and his jaw clenches the second Caroline is mentioned. Sometimes the people who share our DNA are the ones who know exactly where to slip the knife. He looks at her, waiting to see if she is going to take the bait. Memories hit Arya like an absolute truck. She remembers the late-night childhood secrets, the fierce loyalty they used to have, and how Caroline's laugh used to light up a room. But nostalgia is a dangerous liar when your current reality is completely toxic. Right behind those good times is the fresh trauma of that family dinner. She remembers Caroline having zero shame, acting like an entitled brat who always gets away with everything. Walking away from family is one of the bravest, and honestly, most agonizing choices a human can make. Arya whispers a hard no. She blocks her sister's number, completely powers down the phone, and cuts the cord. Luca does not judge her at all. He just gives her this quiet nod of respect. The car pulls up, and she says it is time to go. Stick with me here, because this ending is everything. The city blurs past the tinted car window in a mix of neons and dark alleyways. Luca walks her right up to her door, playing the ultimate silent guardian. She tries to thank him for having her back, but he just brushes it off with a rare, faint smile. Before she heads inside, he tells her she is way stronger than she thinks. True growth begins the exact moment you finally believe in your own resilience. Speechless, she just nods and slips into her place. The apartment feels super empty without his heavy mob boss energy. To fight off the lonely vibes, she flips on every single light, brews some tea she is definitely not going to drink, and flips open her laptop to get back to the grind. Unpack this absolute madness, guys. Arya is sitting there, drafting this nuclear text to her mom. She is laying out the brutal facts. Caroline and Marcus didn't just slip up once. Nope. They woke up every single day for 6 months and actively chose to stab her in the back. A total calculated vendetta. She types out that she is officially done playing the perfect doormat daughter, warning her mom that she might just cut the whole toxic family off to survive. Sometimes, drawing a hard line in the sand feels like you are shattering your own heart, but you have to protect your peace first. But wait for the massive plot twist. She stares at this loaded weapon of a message, takes a deep breath, and hits delete on the whole thing. The villain era is coming, but today is not the day. Instead of dealing with the absolute dumpster fire that is her family, our girl goes full ghost mode and buries herself in her photography. She is up until 2 a.m, hyper-fixating on mood boards for this massive New York gig. Honestly, throwing yourself into your hustle is the best way to dodge the demons trying to mess with your head at night. For 3 straight weeks, work is her only safe zone. Meanwhile, Luca is sliding into her texts, playing the stoic protector, just making sure she hasn't forgotten to eat. She is saving every single message like a lifeline, because his loyalty is the only real thing she has left. But just when you think you have ghosted the drama, the universe demands its pound of flesh. 2 days before her flight, her phone starts ringing. She is staring at that caller like it is a ticking time bomb, and every survival instinct is screaming at her to ignore it. But that tiny, foolish sliver of hope makes her pick up. Her mom is on the other end, sounding absolutely wrecked, begging for 5 minutes. Arya braces for impact as her mom drops a tearful apology, swearing she had no clue how deep Marcus and Caroline's betrayal actually went. But listen, an apology wrapped in fake ignorance never fixes the damage. Arya completely snaps back. She calls out the pure hypocrisy, reminding her mom how she ruthlessly protected Caroline for weeks. Her mom sobs about trying to keep the family intact, and Arya drops the coldest truth bomb of the century. She tells her the family is already a corpse, then pure, dead silence. Stick with me on this one, because the silence after that phone call is incredibly heavy. Her mom is just pouring out these desperate sorries for turning a blind eye and leaving Arya to tank all this massive betrayal completely solo. You can practically feel Arya choking on years of bottled-up venom. She does not have some neat Hollywood forgiveness speech ready, and frankly, she shouldn't. Her mom just has to sit there and eat the reality of her own massive failure. Arya mutters that she hears her, but those stab wounds in her back are still bleeding. Then comes this super awkward Thanksgiving invite, which gets nothing but a totally non-committal maybe. Real life lesson here, guys. Forgiveness is not some magical quick fix. Sometimes it is just surviving the ache until it fades. Hangs up, and honestly, there is no magical weight lifted off her shoulders. But it isn't worse either. We will take that win. Cut to the day before her massive flight, and Luca summons her to his home turf. She was totally expecting some villainesque, cold glass skyscraper. Instead, his spot is straight-up historic vibes, exposed brick and massive sunlit windows. It actually feels like a real human lives there. He hangs up his phone and waves her over, and the tension is so thick you could slice it with a katana. Then he slides a completely blank envelope across the desk. It is his bankroll for her New York takeover. Inside is a massive check that changes everything. It is a solid reminder that the biggest lifelines in life usually come from the absolute last person you expect. This insane flex, $20,000. That number is staring back at her, and her defensive walls instantly shoot up to the ceiling. She demands to know what his angle is. But Luca is just sitting there like an absolute boss, explaining it is for the real war ahead, the gear, the armor, the peace of mind. She tries to reject it, but he shuts that down with pure facts. He has watched her hustle with broken gear for 5 brutal years. He knows she can survive. But he wants her to dominate. She swears she will pay back every single dime. His response? He just wants her to create art so brilliant it totally eclipses him. Honestly, the toughest pill to swallow in life is just letting a real one have your back. She pockets the cash, and the guy actually cracks a smile. That rare smile completely changes the guy's whole vibe, wiping out the mafia boss energy and showing the real him. He calls her impossible, and she immediately fires the exact same roast right back at him. They just sit there in this totally comfortable silence, the tension finally gone. Then he hits her with the big question. Is she actually ready for the absolute meat grinder that is New York? She thinks about all the brutal backstabbing she has survived this month, shedding her old doormat persona to level up. She admits she is totally terrified, but she is walking straight into the flames regardless, because true courage is just taking the hit while you are shaking in your boots. Right as she hits the door, he drops one last heavy warning. Never let your own brain be your worst enemy. Gives him a silent nod because her voice is totally gone, and dips out. Next morning, boom, she is on flight to New York, lugging a bag packed with top-tier gear and a contract that is about to flip her whole life upside down. But she has this gnawing ache in her chest, that wild feeling when a brutal chapter closes and a terrifying new one begins. Leveling up your life always feels a little bit like a funeral at first. Hitting those city streets is like taking a punch of ice water to the face. The noise is absolute chaos, millions of people, just speedrunning their own daily drama. She has been to the city before, but never with this kind of massive boss energy. Her hotel in Midtown is ridiculously sleek and cold, basically a fancy spawn point before the real war starts. Picture this absolute madness, guys. She is trapped on the 11th floor, completely swallowed by these clinical white hotel walls, frozen by the insane scale of what she has just signed up for. Then her phone buzzes. It is Luca, doing his long-distance protector thing. She straight up admits she is panicking, and he drops this incredibly solid reality check. He tells her that fear is just proof that you actually give a damn. That is a massive lesson to keep in your back pocket when the imposter syndrome hits hard. This gig is going to be a total bloodbath. 8 high-profile targets in just 3 days. She completely buries her panic in the prep work, analyzing her target notes and lighting setups until her brain is mush. The sun completely drops before she even realizes she forgot to eat. She forces down some incredibly sad room service, but getting any sleep is a total joke. She is just laying there on this rock-hard mattress, staring into the void, while the chaotic sirens of the city bleed through her window. By 2 a.m, she totally gives up, grabs her camera, and goes rogue into the concrete jungle. New York at night is a completely different beast, vibrating with this dark, gritty survival energy. She walks until her feet are screaming, framing up the absolute rawest shots of the streets. We are talking broken souls on subway grates and streetlights reflecting off the grimy, wet asphalt. It is cinematic gold, because here is the real truth. Sometimes you have to wander blind into the absolute darkest places to finally lock in your crystal clear focus. Camping by the window as the pitch-black night turns into this freezing, pale morning. Boom, 6:30 hits and the silence is violently killed by a call. It is Elaine, barking orders and confirming the black car is waiting. Arya looks in that brutal bathroom mirror and does not even recognize the sleep-deprived ghost staring back at her. She is running on zero sleep, pure spite and caffeine. But honestly, in a dog-eat-dog city like this, spite is a totally valid survival strategy. The Brooklyn studio is this intimidating, massive concrete bunker, and standing at the door like the final boss is Elaine, all black outfit, staring her down with the eyes of a hitman, who just happens to run an art gallery. Their handshake is straight up a covert power struggle, testing if Arya is going to fold. Elaine name-drops Luca's high praise, but her voice is as icy as a freezer. Arya tries to play it cool, saying the guy is just biased, but Elaine completely shuts that down, saying Luca's radar is practically flawless. She points to the pitch-black studio floor and basically says, "Show me what you got." Target number 1? Maya Chen, a ruthless tech CEO who dragged herself from the gutter straight to the top of the Forbes list. Elaine warns her that Maya is a walking vault, deeply guarded and impossible to crack. Arya spends an agonizing hour fighting the shadows, perfectly rigging the lights. At 9 sharp, Maya enters the arena. She is rocking a custom suit that costs more than a car, projecting this terrifyingly calm boss aura. Real power, guys, is hiding your deepest scars behind a totally unbreakable poker face. Alright guys, picture this. Maya walks in acting super polite, but her head is literally on another planet. She has that boss-level corporate skill, where she talks forever without saying anything real. Her handshake was basically a ghost. Arya sits her down in the morning light, and Maya instantly locks into this stiff, controlled posture, totally flexing for the cameras. Arya snaps the first shots, and they look totally flawless, but completely dead inside. So Arya goes completely rogue. She drops the lens and asks the one question she was absolutely banned from asking. "Why are you really doing this?" And boom, for just a split second, that perfect smile cracks, showing the completely exhausted human underneath. Honestly, it goes to show that no matter how untouchable someone looks, we are all fighting hidden battles behind closed doors. Stick with me here, because this is the exact second her armor totally shatters. Arya presses harder, calling out the nonsense. Maya already has the wealth, the covers, and the desperate investors. Why fake this vibe about redefining success? A heavy silence drops before Maya lets out a sharp laugh. She straight up admits her public relations team begged her to fake a relatable side. Then Arya drops the absolute nuke. Does that human side even exist anymore? Maya physically collapses. She confesses she sold her soul to build her massive empire. The untouchable boss vanishes, leaving behind a woman drowning in her own trap. It is a harsh reality check. When you chase pure power at the expense of your peace, the massive empire you build will eventually become your own permanent prison. Confession spills out like a broken dam, and guys, it is completely brutal. Maya has been surviving on 4 hours of sleep for 3 straight years. She can barely remember her own family. 200 employees are hanging on to her every single move, and she is terrified of destroying their lives. Click. Arya snaps the camera, catching all that raw trauma. When Arya asks why she refuses to just quit, Maya drops the heaviest truth bomb. If she stops, she has to face absolute void. She is practically nothing without this heavy crown that she secretly hates. For the next hour, Arya operates like an emotional surgeon, ripping away the fake corporate armor until she finds a real heart underneath. It proves that our biggest flexes are usually just massive shields hiding how utterly exhausted we truly are. By the time they wrap up, Maya literally tosses her stiff jacket. Her face finally shows the massive relief of being truly seen. The rest of the day turns into a parade of totally broken but amazing people. A fierce mother pulling off absolute miracles. A crushed athlete rebuilding her identity from dust. A writer who tanked decades of brutal rejection. You and I both know exactly how heavy those invisible backpacks of stress can get. Every person walked in with their emotional walls maxed out. But they all surrendered their hidden trauma to the lens. When the last guest leaves, it is dark outside. Arya is physically wrecked, her eyes burning, but her spirit is totally leveled up. Helping others drop their heavy masks is genuinely the quickest way to heal your own soul. Once the hype dies down, the big boss Elaine creeps through the dark studio. She ruthlessly demands the unedited files by morning, giving zero room for fake outs. She drops a rare compliment, admitting she fully expected Arya to get wrecked today. Arya fires back with dry sarcasm, but Elaine does not blink. She straight up says she operates on raw killer instinct, and her gut proves Luca was right about Arya all along. Then she vanishes like a ghost. But as soon as Arya gets back to her quiet hotel, reality hits her like a massive truck. Her phone lights up with 6 terrifying missed calls. 2 from the mom she is trying to forgive, 1 from Luca, and 3 from an unknown stalker in the shadows. Sometimes the hardest part of surviving a massive battle is dealing with the quiet wreckage waiting for you back home. Arya calls him back, gripping her phone like it weighs a ton. Luca answers with a deep rumble, asking how day 1 went. She says it was terrifying but insanely good. That is exactly what he needed to hear. He warns her that Elaine will demand the raw files and tells her not to panic. Arya laughs and says it is way too late for that. Then Luca lets out a warm, genuine laugh that completely disarms her. He promises her she will crush this. They stay on the line for 20 minutes, talking about how this ruthless city can make you a giant or crush you to dust. By the time she hangs up, her anxiety is entirely gone. The next 2 days are a pure grind of intense conversations. You and I both know the drill. Sometimes all you really need is one steady voice in the total chaos to remind you that your footing is absolutely secure. Forward to day 3, and the studio tension is absolutely suffocating. Elaine is sitting there, totally silent, scrolling through the raw shots. Click, zoom, the silence is brutal. Finally, the big boss looks up. She admits they are good. Then she corrects herself. They are extremely good. Way better than expected. Arya feels this massive iron cage around her chest finally shatter. When she tries to say thanks, Elaine instantly shuts it down. "Do not thank me," she says. "You put in the actual sweat," and then she drops an absolute plot twist. She offers Arya a massive 3-month contract to document human legacy. Arya is literally stunned silent. Here is the ultimate truth, guys. Real success never comes with a loud parade. It happens in dead silent rooms, the exact second you finally realize your own undeniable value. Arya stammers out a yes, her heart absolutely redlining. Elaine tells her to get out and celebrate, so Arya wanders into the city like she is floating. She lets the ruthless Crete jungle swallow her up, until she hits the cold air of Central Park and collapses on a bench. Then, out of nowhere, her phone vibrates. It is that unknown number again. "Congratulations," it says. "Heard you killed it. It is Marcus." Her toxic ex bought a whole new phone line, just to sneak past her blocks. The urge to wreck him over text is burning through her fingers. But check this out, this is the ultimate lesson about toxic ghosts. If you fight them, you just give them the drama they are craving. So Arya executes the ultimate power move. She deletes the message, turns off the phone entirely, and lets the silence completely crush him. That night, she hides out in this tiny Italian joint near her hotel. We are talking dripping candles and dark corners, the perfect spot for lonely people to vanish. She is eating pasta, watching strangers hustle by suddenly. A waiter slides a brand new glass of expensive wine onto her table and points to the bar. She looks over, and boom, it is Luca. He is rocking a flawless tailored suit, looking like he literally owns the city. He casually raises his glass like a total boss. With a tiny nod, she invites him over. He slides into the booth and smoothly claims he just had some random business meetings in town. Right. A massive flight across the country just to check in. It is hilarious how far people will travel to protect someone they secretly care about, all while playing it off as strictly business. He leans in and asks how she is holding up. She tells him she feels like she just survived a war zone, but Elaine wants her for a massive new project. Luca smirks like a proud mastermind. He already knew because Elaine called him first. Arya takes a sip of the top-tier wine and fires back, asking why he is actually here. Luca goes dead silent. Those piercing eyes strip right through her emotional armor. He finally admits he just wanted to make sure she was okay and not celebrating a massive victory completely alone. Guys, this part hits extremely hard. Arya gets entirely choked up. The absolute hardest thing for a guarded person to accept is that someone else actually wants to stand watch while they rest. They spend the rest of the night analyzing the crazy psychology of capturing raw strangers on camera. Luca drops insane stories about a massive corporate merger getting completely wrecked because 2 stubborn bosses refuse to even breathe the same air. In return, Arya spills the beans about Maya. She breaks down that exact second, the boss' iron armor shattered, exposing the panicked human underneath. Luca looks at her and says that is her true superpower. She hunts down the exact secrets people try to bury. Later, they are walking through the blazing neon chaos of Times Square. Luca stares at the crowds and mutters that he hates this place because absolutely everyone is faking a persona. Arya hits him with a sideways glance and completely calls him out, pointing out that he fakes his own persona constantly. But honestly, do we not all do that? We wear these heavy masks every day until we finally find someone safe enough to let us drop them. He gets super defensive, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. He says he only plays the ruthless boss behind closed doors, not out in the street for random strangers. Arya stops in her tracks and stares right through him. She asks if he ever lets anyone see the real version of himself, the guy who is not playing a massive mind game. Luca turns around, locking his intense gaze onto hers, and drops an absolute bombshell. He tells her he is letting her see it right now. Boom. The entire screaming city just completely mutes. The tension between them is literally electric. Finally, he breaks the crazy stare and whispers that they need to get out of there. Back at her hotel, she tries to thank him for having her back. He just sighs. When someone truly shows up for you in the dark, gratitude is just a protective shield. Then, he pulls her into a massive, solid hug. Set the scene. This was not some polite little pat on the back. Luca wraps Arya up like an absolute anchor against the freezing cold, and you can see her whole body freeze before she finally caves into it. When he pulls away, that icy mob boss stare is totally gone. He tells her she did something incredible, and warns her not to let Marcus or Elaine or anyone steal that win. Huge power move. She runs back to her room, wide awake, staring at the raw photos on her laptop. Every single face on that screen screams pure truth. Here is the real lesson. You only start to heal the second you own your actual power. But boom, the piece shatters, her phone buzzes. It is Marcus. Of this text from Marcus. He actually says he knows she does not want to hear from him, but he is sorry and she deserved better. The absolute audacity of this guy. Arya does not even blink. Her fingers fly across the glass. Shooting back the coldest reply ever, she tells him he is right. She does deserve better. And to never contact her again, blocked and deleted. The past is literally dead to her. Now next morning she is flying back, looking down at the city. No longer running like a victim, but stepping up like a boss. Growth is never gentle, friends. It is the fire you walk through to build a brand new spine. She lands and guess who is waiting? Luca sent his dark sedan. Boss moves only. She steps back into her apartment, and it feels like stepping into a museum. Everything looks exactly the same, but our girl has completely leveled up. She hits her desk, and boom, an email from Elaine drops. Attached are the final selects. And her name is hitting the credits next month. Absolute victory. Arya clicks the folder, her hands literally shaking, staring at 12 raw, gorgeous shots. She actually pulled it off. Right on cue, the phone rings. It is Luca, skipping the small talk completely. He asks if she saw the email. She whispers that she does not even know what to say. Luca hits her with the smooth boss logic. Just feel it, he tells her. Giving yourself permission to feel the win is the bravest thing you can do. Guys, the pride washing over her right now is unreal. She bet her entire soul on this play and took the house. She tells Luca thank you for believing in her before she even knew how to play the game. His voice drops into that deep rumble we all know. He says that is exactly what he does. He spots the lethal potential people hide, and he waits in the shadows for them to level up. They stay on the line, talking about the dreaded holiday drama. Mainly whether she should face her mother for Thanksgiving. Luca drops pure wisdom here. He says do what is true, not what keeps the peace. If you do not know what that is yet, just wait. True clarity never shows up when you are rushing to please everybody else. The call ends, and for once the quiet actually feels safe. Arya stares down the faces on her screen, totally raw and unflinching. She is finally burying her ghosts. Marcus is done. Caroline is done. And her mother making that fragile little bridge of an apology? The terrified girl who walked into that gala last month is totally gone. Arya opens a blank email and types out the coldest, cleanest boundary ever. She tells her mom she is not ready to face Caroline. Maybe she never will be, but she will meet her mother alone. We spend way too much time waiting for the perfect apology, but sometimes drawing a hard line in the sand is the only closure we actually need. She hits send, locking it down completely. She lets out a massive breath and dives right back into the grind. Listen, you and I both know the brutal reality of leveling up. It is never clean, it is never pretty, it is just relentless. 2 agonizing days drag by before her phone lights up with her mother answering. The message is super cautious, completely stripped of the usual toxic family drama. She agrees to come over on Saturday, just the two of them. Arya reads it 3 times, hunting for the trapdoor, expecting a knife in the back. But no, it is a straight-up olive branch. She types back a quick confirmation for 2 o'clock. The wait is brutal. Healing is wild like that. It forces you to sit in the waiting room until you are tough enough to kick the door down. Welcome back to the absolute madness, guys. Let us unpack how you try to outrun your own ghosts. Picture Arya, completely glued to her monitor in the dead of night, editing those big city photos to prove she is not the same victim anymore. Luca actually calls her twice. They talk about random documentaries just to dodge the heavy stuff, and she admits she is running on fumes to kill the panic. Luca calls it right out. Are you rebuilding or just dodging bullets? And here is the raw truth. Staying busy is usually just a cheap trick to keep from completely falling apart. By Friday night, our girl is scrubbing spotless floors and moving furniture around past midnight, desperately trying to keep her hands busy. Finally crashes on the couch, staring around this aggressively clean apartment, searching for any kind of vibe. Saturday crashes in, freezing cold and looking miserable. Arya burns her breakfast, trashes it, and downs some bitter coffee instead. She changes clothes 3 times like she is prepping for a hit, pretending it is fine while her heart is pounding out of her chest. 2 o'clock hits, and her mother's car rolls up. Arya watches from the window as her mom steps out, clutching her bag like body armor. She looks so incredibly fragile and exhausted. The craziest thing about life is that the hardest strangers you will ever face are the ones who raised you. Arya yanks the door open. Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. Boom, frozen. Mom freezes up for a second, then goes in for this super brittle hug, holding Arya like she is holding a live grenade. Arya hugs back, and it is the weirdest mix of completely familiar and totally alien. She tells her to come in, and her mom starts scanning the living room like a nervous tourist looking for an exit. They end up sitting across from each other at the tiny kitchen table. Arya pours 2 hot cups of tea just to give her shaking hands a job. Completely knowing neither of them is going to drink a drop, she thanks her mom for showing up. Her mom just grips the mug, staring into the dark water. Pay attention, guys. The absolute heaviest, most brutal conversations of your life always start with a killer silence. Arya flat out tells her she did not think she would actually show up. Her mom admits she was not sure either, and this massive, suffocating silence drops right on top of them. Her mom finally asks how she has been, and Arya keeps her shields all the way up. Mentioning the magazine shoot, then comes the twist. Her mom drops that her dad saw it online, and he is actually proud of her, even if he is too much of a coward to say it. That hits Arya like a truck, totally shattering her defenses. Then her mom takes a shaky breath and drops the real bombshell. She gives a raw, unfiltered apology, admitting she completely failed her. Real healing only kicks off the exact second someone has the guts to look you in the eye and admit they were wrong. Truth finally comes spilling out. Her mother admits that when Arya needed backup, she chose to keep the fake family peace instead. She thought she was holding the family together, but she was just dodging the crossfire while Arya took all the damage. She confesses she was terrified of calling Caroline out, terrified of losing her golden child, so she just froze. She tells Arya that it was not good enough, and our girl looks right back, with this quiet, heavy ache, and agrees. Her mom says she does not even expect forgiveness. She just needs Arya to know she sees the massive wreckage she caused. It is a brutal lesson for everyone. Choosing a fake peace over a hard reality will always destroy the people you care about most. She swipes a hand across her face and realizes she is literally crying. She asks the million-dollar question. Why did you not say this before? Her mom totally breaks down, admitting she was too busy trying to force everyone back to a fake normal. But the illusion is dead. She realizes she taught Caroline she was untouchable, because she covered up all her messes, and she taught Arya that her heart was completely worthless. She built a whole empire where the loudest, most toxic person always won, and now she has to live in the ruins. Arya just stares at the broken woman sitting across from her. Here is the absolute bitter truth. The loudest demands will always drown out the quietest needs until the entire house collapses. Guys, listen closely, because this right here is the massive plot twist we have been waiting for. Arya walked in totally braced for the usual garbage excuses and toxic deflections from her mom. But instead, she gets hit with raw, bleeding accountability. Arya asks about Caroline, keeping her voice super quiet. Her mom just gets this absolute steel in her eyes and says she talked to her, and Caroline is specifically losing her mind crying. Arya hits back with a cold, simple good. Her mom actually drops the hammer, telling Caroline she is done playing the middleman, and no more fake holiday frigs. It is wild to see someone finally step up. Real growth always demands this exact kind of boundary, where you completely stop shielding toxic people from the messy, painful consequences of their own absolute disasters. Let us unpack this together, because the tension here is insane. This heavy iron knot inside Arya finally starts to unravel. She whispers, asking if her mom actually dropped that bomb. Her mom confirms it, straight up saying Caroline hated it. But that is her own problem now. Outside, the city is screaming with sirens, totally oblivious to the heavy emotional repair job happening at this tiny table. Arya keeps it entirely real. She admits she does not know if she can forgive either of them yet. She demands total loyalty, meaning her mom has to back her, not just keep the fake family peace. In this wild life we all live, real loyalty means standing right inside the fire with the person who got burned, instead of just hushing them up to keep the neighbors happy. Mom looks her dead in the eye and promises she has her word. But Arya is not taking the bait. She stares right through her and drops the coldest truth, saying that words are cheap. Her mom actually takes the hit, telling Arya to watch her actions instead. For the next hour, they just talk about normal things, like photography, and her dad fixing a dumb porch light. It feels like the good old days before this whole family drama exploded. When her mom leaves, they share a long, genuine hug. Obviously, this is not some instant magic fix. The deep scars are definitely still there. But as Arya collapses on the couch, she feels the weight lift. We have to remember that sometimes, simply wanting to believe someone is actually trying to change is enough of a solid foundation to start rebuilding your own peace. Is sitting there soaking in the grief and this wild hope that she can fix her life, then her phone buzzes. It is our guy Luca checking in. She texts back that it went better than expected, but was way harder than she wanted. Luca, being an absolute boss, tells her to just chill and not figure everything out tonight. Arya actually smiles and hits him with a surprise invite for Sunday. He hates surprises, but he caves. She rolls up the next day in her dad's completely busted old sedan. Luca folds his frame inside and stares at the cracked dashboard in pure horror, asking if this is really her ride. She tells him not to judge, and the banter just flows. Life constantly proves that the absolute best healers in our corner are the ones who can make us laugh right after a massive emotional breakdown. They roast each other as they ditch the concrete city, driving into a quiet countryside that feels totally off the grid. Luca is stressing because the guy absolutely hates not being in control, begging to know their destination. Arya just teases him, refusing to drop a single hint. Finally, they pull up onto a loud gravel lot next to a huge beat-up old barn, with a swinging wooden sign for the Westfield Art Collective. Luca stares at this rustic setup like it is from another planet, and asks what the deal is. Arya kills the engine, staring dead ahead, and admits this is where she used to go before her entire life imploded. It is a harsh reality, but sometimes you really have to revisit the ghost of who you used to be, just to figure out exactly who you desperately need to become. With me here. This was the era before Marcus ruined her, before New York, and before she completely forgot her own dead talent. They push open the heavy barn doors, getting hit with the intense smell of sawdust, oil paint, and dark coffee. The walls are covered in chaotic local art in mismatched frames. Sitting behind a messy desk is Ruth, this fierce older woman holding a beat-up book. Ruth locks eyes with Arya and roasts her immediately, joking about how she finally remembered her roots. She marches over and crushes Arya in a massive hug, smelling of lavender and old cigarettes, teasing her for going Hollywood on them. It just goes to show that true passion never actually dies. It just waits patiently in the dusty corners of your past until you are finally ready to come back home. Watch this unfold, guys. Ruth turns her razor-sharp gaze onto Luca, hitting him with that brutal assessment only tough older women can pull off. She demands to know who he is. Arya introduces him, hyping Ruth up as the mentor who taught her photography. Ruth fires back that Arya clearly forgot all those lessons, grinning the whole time. After shaking Luca's hand, Ruth's tone gets surprisingly soft. She reveals she kept all of Arya's old artwork hanging in the back corner because she never had the heart to take it down. Arya literally chokes up, completely blindsided by this raw loyalty. Ruth just waves them into the dusty light, ready to show Luca the absolute magic Arya used to create. It proves your true legacy is always protected by the people who knew you before you started wearing a fake mask for the world. Let's step into this dusty back room where her literal past is hanging in stark black and white. 6 photographs Arya snapped 3 years ago are still pinned to the wall. We are talking about gritty local faces, a tired farmer, a diner waitress, a greasy mechanic. The exact kind of everyday people you and I would just walk right past, but she captured them with brutal honesty. Luca is totally frozen, staring at the wall. He mutters that these shots are seriously heavy and completely hold up. Ruth just snorts from her desk, totally vindicated. The tragedy is that Arya spent years chasing hollow validation in the city, totally blind to her own raw talent. It is crazy how the hardest thing in the world is recognizing your own elite value when you are too busy begging for a toxic crowd's applause. The barn goes completely silent, except for the old wood creaking. Luca finally turns to her, eyes locked on hers, and asks the golden question of why she brought him here. Arya lets out a heavy sigh. She needed him to see her true origin story. She wanted him to see who she was before she twisted herself into a fake socialite, just to survive in Marcus' toxic world. She literally sold her soul for a seat at a table full of snakes. Luca turns slowly, the vibe shifting hard. He asks if she knows the real reason he kept picking up her calls and bailing her out of the drama. His voice actually catches when he admits she reminded him of a piece of himself he buried years ago. We all lose our way sometimes. But the right people act as mirrors, perfectly reflecting the exact pieces of our soul we thought were dead forever. He completely flips the script here, pointing right at the portraits. He drops absolute wisdom. He tells her the only work that leaves a mark in this world comes from people who refuse to surrender their souls. The fake galas are garbage, superpowers seeing the broken, invisible people, and making them look like legends. Arya is literally choking back tears, terrified to not be this genuine artist and still survive the brutal city. Luca does not blink. He stares her down and says she just has to stop believing that success equals selling your soul to the highest bidder. Later, they drive back toward the city in a totally comfortable silence while the sun sets. Honestly, sometimes the most profound support someone can ever offer is just ruthlessly believing in the person you already are, without wanting to change a thing. The engine hums as Luca finally breaks the quiet to drop a thank you. Arya keeps her eyes glued to the road, asking what he means. He gets real, explaining that everyone in their toxic circle only shows off the fake destination they are desperate to reach. Nobody ever reveals the messy roots of where they started. Arya grips the steering wheel, whispering that maybe people are just terrified of looking broken. Luca stares out the window, his voice dropping low. He tells her that tonight, he is looking at someone who is way braver than she realizes, and she is absolutely going to survive this. Arya is too choked up to speak. Handing over your vulnerability is a massive, terrifying gamble. But opening that door is literally the only way you will ever let yourself be truly seen by another human being. Thanksgiving rolls around, totally low-key. Arya is chilling with her dad, crushing cold Chinese takeout while football plays in the background. Her dad is an absolute legend for this. He skips the interrogation about the insane breakup with Marcus or the massive family betrayals. He just looks her dead in the eye and says he is proud of the strong woman she is becoming. Honestly, that single sentence was everything she needed. The next few weeks are a blur of grinding at work and cautious talks with her mom that finally stop the bleeding. But then, right before Christmas, a random burner number lights up her phone screen. Any sane person would immediately block it to protect their peace. But curiosity is a brutal trap, and sometimes to finally close a major chapter, you have to answer the exact call that is bound to hurt you. Are you ready for this drop? Arya answers, and a tiny, shaking voice says it is Caroline. The absolute bottom falls right out of Arya's stomach. She hits back with a voice made of pure ice, demanding to know what she wants. Caroline sounds completely broken, begging for forgiveness and crying that she finally understands what she stole. Then comes the massive plot twist. Caroline and Marcus are officially done. The whole backstabbing romance totally crashed and burned. You would expect Arya to feel a massive rush of sweet karmic revenge right now, but instead, she just feels this heavy, exhausting emptiness in her bones. She actually sighs and tells Caroline she is sorry that happened. It is the ultimate flex moving on. Holding on to toxic bitterness only poisons your own mind, while the villain sleeps perfectly fine through the night. This absolute mess, guys. Caroline is literally bawling her eyes out on the phone, hyperventilating and acting like the victim after pulling the most toxic stunt ever. She is straight up admitting she was selfish and just scared of being alone. And what does our girl Arya do? She just sits on her bed like an absolute boss and hits her with the coldest, flattest confirmation. No sugarcoating, no fake hugs. Caroline isn't even asking for forgiveness, she is just drowning in guilt and needs to vent. Chat, let this be a lesson for all of us. Sometimes an apology is not about fixing the broken bridge. Sometimes it is just the person who lit the match desperately needing to confess that they are the one who burned it down. The silence on that phone call was thicker than concrete. I am telling you, then Caroline completely cracks and drops the heavy confession that she misses her. Oh man, you can feel Arya struggling here. Her instinct is to comfort her old best friend. But those backstabbing scars are way too deep. She drops an absolute truth bomb, whispering that she misses her too, but that does not delete the betrayal. Caroline knows it. They hang up and Arya just stares at her wall. Letting the massive gravity of the drama sink in, It is not some fairy tale ending, and it definitely is not forgiveness. But listen to me carefully. True healing does not come with fireworks. It usually just sneaks up on you as a quiet realization that you are finally ready to put down that heavy baggage. So Arya immediately shoots a text to Luca about the whole crazy phone call, saying she feels totally empty. Luca, being the absolute green flag that he is, instantly replies that healing is a messy process. Fast forward to Christmas, and our girl is flying solo. But get this, it is actually by choice. She spends the night editing photos, finding her peace. Then New Year's Eve hits, and Luca calls her out of absolutely nowhere. His voice is practically booming through the speaker, demanding to know her plans. He invites her to this super exclusive, low-key dinner with his inner circle. And guys, here is the real takeaway. Surrounding yourself with solid people who do not demand a fake performance is literally the rarest, most beautiful kind of safety net you will ever find. Hovering over her screen, totally debating if she should ghost, but finally agrees. She tells him straight up. If the vibes are off, she is walking right out. Luca just laughs it off. She rolls up to this super hidden, dimly lit spot. And Luca is chilling with 5 friends who just radiate genuine kindness. They do not interrogate her. They do not dig into her messy past or ask draining, invasive questions. They are just hyping up the thrill of jumping blind into a brand new year. And they fold her right into their squad like she has been there since day one. Take notes on this one, chat. There is a crazy, quiet magic in finding a room full of strangers who just let you exist and catch your breath, without secretly trying to extract something from you. Halfway through dessert, when the plot suddenly thickens, one woman leans in and drops a massive secret, whispering that Luca literally will not shut up about Arya. She says he is obsessed with her photography skills, and never hypes people up like this. Arya is totally thrown off balance, stealing glances at Luca, who is completely oblivious, aggressively debating something across the table. When the clock strikes midnight, the whole crew spills onto the freezing street, passing around cheap champagne. As the countdown wraps up, Arya feels a massive rusted lock inside her chest finally snap open, and honestly, this is the biggest lesson of the entire arc. You do not have to be completely put back together to finally start feeling like your true self again. Claude starts heading out, and Luca is walking her to her car, hands shoved in his pockets like a movie scene. He tells her the crew loved her, and then drops the craziest line. Sarah wanted to know if Arya was single. Arya's heart is absolutely pounding now. She hits him back softly, asking if he is trying to find out. Luca freezes. He looks at her with this intense, quiet confession energy and whispers, "Are you ready for me too?" Bro, the tension is insane, but Arya does the most boss move ever. She is done being the girl who waits for a guy to choose her. She smiles and tells him to ask again in a few months. Listen to me, guys. Timing is literally everything. You cannot rush the harvest when your soul is still in the middle of a massive healing arc. He does not even get mad. His face just softens into this super knowing smile, and he promises he will wait. He pulls her into this massive warm hug right there on the dark street. There is no rushed, messy hookup, just pure mutual respect. Total win. Arya drives home through the empty city, watching fireworks explode against the black sky. She is thinking about her toxic sex, Marcus, the backstabber Caroline, and how she leveled up by dropping them all. But mostly, she is thinking about Luca. Guys, always remember this absolute truth. The best chapters in your life are when you finally stop forcing things to happen. Every single broken promise and shattered dream is just a paving stone, guiding you straight back to your own power. She is finally ready for the morning. Let us get one thing straight. Healing is never just a clean, easy speed run. Arya still wakes up some mornings with pure rage burning in her chest, missing the innocent version of herself before the massive betrayal. But here is the kicker: she took all that dark, heavy agony and turned it into pure rocket fuel. She walked into rooms that tried to destroy her and walked out with titanium armor. Fast forward 3 months, and her boss Elaine calls to say the photo spread is dropping. When the physical magazine finally arrives, Arya opens it like it is a fragile artifact, and boom, 12 massive, glossy pages featuring her raw, unfiltered portraits. When life tries to hand you an absolute loss, you pivot and use that exact same trauma to build your empire. There at the bottom of the page, in bold letters, it says Photography by Arya Vale. She is literally crying looking at it. Her hands are shaking as she calls Luca to tell him they finally made it. She tries to give him the credit, saying she could never have done it without him. But Luca is not having any of that nonsense. He immediately shuts it down. telling her she absolutely had the fire to do it alone. He just gave her a speed boost. She actually laughs, like a real, genuine laugh. He tells her to stop deflecting and just own her massive victory. Here is a life lesson you all need to hear today. Sometimes the absolute bravest thing you can do is to stop brushing off your own hard work, step into the spotlight, and simply let yourself shine. She drives straight to her mother's house, and the second the door opens and her mom sees the magazine, she is instantly crying tears of pride. Later that night, Arya posts just one portrait online, not for the clout, but because she earned it. The hype is unreal. Comments are flooding in. But then, an absolute jump scare. Marcus comments the toxic ex crawls out of the woodwork to say her art is incredible and apologizes for sleeping on her talent. Guys, she looks at his name, and with zero hesitation, deletes the comment. No reply, no drama, just deleted. Because here is the brutal truth of this world. Sometimes you literally have to lose every single thing you thought you wanted, just to unlock the absolute fierce, unstoppable power you always had inside you. Skip ahead 6 months and the glow-up is officially complete. Arya is standing in her very own solo exhibition in a Brooklyn gallery. Her name is plastered on the wall, in massive letters. Luca is right there beside her, admiring a crazy shot of a librarian. He looks at her and says, "You built this," but the absolute mad lass turns to him. The whole vibe in the room shifts, and she drops the ultimate cliffhanger. She asks if he is finally ready for her to answer that question from New Year's Eve. Luca looks completely vulnerable, and she whispers that she is ready to try if he is. Look, chat, you have to build your own castle before you let anyone else walk across the drawbridge. You have to be the main character of your own story first. He drops his usual, cold corporate boardroom smirk and gives her this incredibly warm, genuine smile that makes him look so human. He whispers that he is ready and grabs her hand. For the first time ever, our girl feels completely grounded. Not because some guy finally chose her, but because she locked in and chose herself first. The gallery is a massive hit. Critics are losing their minds, and she even gets a book deal. Caroline even sends flowers. And Arya just lets them sit on the counter until they completely wither away. Such a boss move. Let that sink in, guys. Life can be an absolute agonizing mess, but it is also insanely beautiful. Build your own foundation first, and only then invite someone else to share the view. Absolute cinema. Picture this. Her parents stand at the gallery wall, completely speechless, just holding hands. Later that night, the doors lock and Arya is alone with those intense photos. She thinks about the absolute wreck she was a year ago. Remember that girl? The one who believed her worth depended on the toxic people who stabbed her in the back. Well, she is permanently gone. Now we have a total boss forged straight out of the fire. Here is the real lesson: your darkest, most painful moments are never the end of your story. They are just the brutal origin story of your next chapter. Arya hits the light switch and steps out into the freezing city night. The great unknown just does not scare her anymore. She finally knows exactly who she is. Let us get real about having a knife twisted in your back. You and I both know, you cannot just delete the memory of a deep betrayal. It never just washes away. You beat it by leveling up into someone that old pain cannot reach anymore. You build an absolute fortress of self-respect, and Arya did exactly that. She walked straight through the flames of this drama, and came out completely untouchable. Listen, it is not because her heart turned to ice. She won because she finally figured out that her true worth is never up for debate. No backstabbing tragedy can ever lower her value again. Standing out there in the dark, breathing in the freezing air, that absolute certainty is her ultimate superpower. The agony is just a ghost now. Our girl is finally free.
At the beginning of the story, Arya has spent years performing. She performs as Marcus's girlfriend. She performs as the quiet daughter who does not disturb the family. She performs as the sister expected to absorb pain so everyone else can remain comfortable. Her life has been shaped by other people's expectations. The gala becomes an important turning point because Arya finally performs for herself. At first, Luca helps her understand how powerful people use image, silence, and presence. But beneath the elegance of the night, something deeper is happening. Arya is learning that she no longer has to make herself small to protect other people from discomfort. This is a meaningful educational lesson. Many people are taught to keep peace at the cost of their own truth. They are told to forgive quickly, smile politely, answer messages, attend family events, and act normal even when they have been deeply hurt. But healing cannot happen when a person is forced to pretend. Arya begins to heal when she says no to Marcus. She continues healing when she blocks Caroline. She grows stronger when she tells her mother that she needs space. These are not acts of cruelty. They are acts of self-protection. The story teaches that boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are a way of saying, my pain matters too. Arya does not heal by screaming in public or destroying others. She heals by choosing where her energy goes. For viewers, this lesson is important. You do not owe constant access to people who hurt you. You are allowed to pause, step back, and rebuild yourself. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop performing peace and start protecting your own heart.